May Day was a day that brought hundreds of thousands worldwide out in the streets to stand for economic justice. But out of all the retelling of May Day's historical roots, one disturbing event has been kept out of the dialogue, and for good reason. Did you know that on May Day in 1971, the Army herded 7,000 protesters into a stadium-turned-prison camp right here in Washington, D.C.? Well, that was back in the 1970s, and a lot's changed since then, right? Well, not exactly. The infamous incident of the U.S. military interfering in local law enforcement operations leads us to a recently released DoD document called, quote, Internment and Resettlement Operations. The manual outlines policies for processing detainees in internment camps inside and outside of the U.S., including the re-education of detainees to ensure their integration back into society. So is this a hyperbolic situation of the worst-case scenario, or does this manual shed a light on what's to come in the U.S.? To help me answer some of those questions, I'm joined now by Alex Jones, host of The Alex Jones Show. Hey, Alex.
Hi.
So the government writes lots of memos about hyperbolic situations that never really come to fruition. Why is this one so different?
Sure, that's a good question. This is not just a contingency plan. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, we had Rex 84 and other plans. Now there's been a massive ratcheting up and billions of dollars a year being spent in the last decade or so to actually take old military bases under the Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program under the Emergency Centers Establishment Act and to prepare them for, quote, emergencies. But I've been to the drills and noticed that they were training with the role players to put American political dissidents in them. They always tell the media that it's for disasters domestically or foreign wars and putting people in camps like Abu Ghraib in Iraq or Camp X-Ray in Cuba. But now more and more documents are coming out confirming what I already had from sources and my research into this and the 4 films I've made in the Police State series, starting with Police State 2000 in 1999, where I witnessed Marines training to confiscate firearms on the West Coast and put Americans, both on the left and right, into camps and even segregate them according to their different political persuasions. Now we have an Army document that dovetails with huge increased spending, hiring tens of thousands of people in the military to specifically be internment camp officers. And I actually had military personnel blow the whistle on this to me in the last year about the hiring of tens of thousands of people in the training camps that they've set up to train the prison guards for these. And in this new document,
oh yeah, I was just going to say, talk a little bit. Yeah, you're talking about they're hiring hundreds of thousands of people, and talk a little bit about the PSYOP program within the document and what that really means. I mean, the re-education aspect of this document. Should people care about that? Explain a little bit more about that.
Exactly. That's what's sensational about this is they went from saying there aren't camps to, okay, we're building a bunch of them and manning them, and they have other contracts to prepare for private contractors to be ready within 70 hours or so to be able to fully man the camps that are already built. And in this new document, this isn't some contingency plan. This is the manual, and I can give people the number. It's FM 3-39.40, and they admit this is real. To psychologically brainwash with loudspeakers, to bring the political dissidents in who are there because of their political views, and to take them into other segregated areas of the camps. And it talks about psyoping them, conditioning them with classic 24-hour blaring loudspeakers. And what's crazy is when I've been to these urban warfare drills, that's what they announce is civil disobedience will not be tolerated. Your First Amendment has been canceled. And then when I had camera crews at the G20 in Pittsburgh 2 years ago, they had the police under military training saying the exact same thing and even attacking students at the college who weren't even protesting. We got video of young women on bicycles. And they were saying daytime, nighttime curfew, stay in your dormitories, beating women over the head with billy clubs just for fun, just to set the precedent that, hey, you don't come out of your dorm. There was famous footage at the G20 under Pentagon control with the local police and National Guard with German Shepherds, old women coming out of the grocery store with bags. And they're told, you can't be on the street. It's broad daylight. And they release the German Shepherds who begin biting the old women. I mean, this is just absolutely off the charts. Even the most authoritarian states don't act like this. And the social controllers, the big banks that have taken over this country, and their collaborators in the police and military are openly trying to train the police and military to be attack dogs. And now we've got North Korean style gulags with re-education camp manuals right out of the most authoritarian regimes this world has seen. This really proves.
What does the reintegration even mean? I mean, how can they be sure that someone's ready to be reintegrated into society? It seems like an interesting concept to explore. What do you think that means? I mean, what will that entail?
Well, we know what happens in classical re-education camps. They get people within the camps to turn against those that are picked out to be persecuted, and really it's about the mass of people getting into serving the camp guards and being collaborators. Those that are chosen as the political dissidents to be tortured and abused and broken, they're generally kept for decades or put in slave labor. They're never to be released. The real secret of a re-education camp under the Soviet Nazi model, Khmer Rouge model, I mean, all systems that have become authoritarian have done this. The real point of this re-education camp center is to get the majority to join in on oppressing citizens, and then some of the best enforcers of the authoritarian system are those that were actually in the re-education camp. They're finding people not to break them, but who will enjoy serving the system. That's what these camps are really about. Just like they've used Abu Ghraib, but more importantly, they've used Camp X-Ray at the base in Guantanamo Bay to create the new Al-Qaeda that they use to go take over Libya, and they're using to attack Syria. So the truth is, it's actually a training ground to find and create double agent Al-Qaeda. Well, it's the same thing here. These re-education camps are actually factories to create collaborators.
Alex, I wanted to talk a little bit about the memo where it says that it invokes a special restriction on the Posse Comitatus Act, but I thought that Bush in the John Warner Defense Authorization Act of 2007 already suspended the Posse Comitatus Act. I was wondering if you could explain what that exactly means to civilians.
Well, I got to say, from all the RT shows I've done that are excellent, you are asking the best questions. It's 300+ pages. It actually states that, well, there is Posse Comitatus, but the president can suspend that. So all intents and purposes, it's already suspended. Kind of like Congress told Obama, you've got to get authorization to launch a war in Libya, and he said, I don't need that anymore. And so they talk about Posse Comitatus, but only to state it's hollow and dead. And yes, the John Warner Defense Authorization Act, the n.d.a.a, all of these just further suspend Posse Comitatus, the 1878 law barring the military being used on the streets of America.
Do you think that these measures, Alex, are being set up in anticipation for some sort of global, unrest domestically? I mean, it just seems like after 9/11, all these measures have been taking place. Why? What is the purpose of ushering them in so quickly? The n.d.a.a, John Warner, this. What do you think they're preparing for?
Well, we've seen The Economist magazine, Time magazine, you name it, say Bank of the World, technocrats, the world will no longer have freedom. They brag Goldman Sachs has conquered Europe. Goldman Sachs has conquered us by having our politicians sign on to the impossible to pay quadrillion plus derivatives. And so they're getting us ready for a total engineered collapse where those that collapse the society to re-engineer it pose as the savior. And so that's why they've taken old contingency plans and things they beta tested back in the 70s and 80s and have put it on a war footing and just ramped it up 500%. I mean, it is just, it's not just this document, it's billions a year now in the public bids for companies to supply the barbed wire, the private security, the interrogators. I mean, it's all there. You just have to look at each document and put them together, and it is frightening. A lot of intelligence.
It is interesting, Alex, and it is also worth noting that the government has said that it's not a matter of if, but when there will be a digital terrorist attack, and that could explain the crackdowns on the internet and the fight that we're seeing on that front. That was Alex Jones, host of the Alex Jones Show.